let's settle down because you can't wait for what's coming next. We have our closing keynote for the day. She is someone who graced us with her beautiful presence yesterday and lit up not only the stage, but our minds with her thoughts. And we are fortunate enough to have her as our closing keynote today. Please welcome Patricia Sun onto the stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much. I decided to talk about intuition and inspiration and what entrepreneurship really should be. It really should be not only gathering people together by inspiring them and getting a great idea and doing some great project. It should also be something higher than just making money over it. There's nothing wrong with making money. In fact, when you make money doing something really inspired, it's a blessing. It changes the world. You do much more, and it's almost always more successful. So the idea of inspiration itself is kind of lacking in our culture. I mentioned once before that every workshop I've ever begun has begun with first, thank you everyone who's listening and being here for coming, because I never think it's an accident, but also that I believe we are in the midst of an evolutionary leap, that our brains are actually changing. And what all the chaos and change is that's going on right now in the world has to do with this change. It's an evolutionary jump. And one of the things that is affected is our intuitive mind. And we can make a little shorthand by talking about left brain and right brain, which I sort of pioneered about 40 years ago, that there is such a thing. I used to call the right brain the soft mind, the receptive mind, the one that nobody seemed to know anything about. They knew all about the linear, logical mind. In fact, I remember on a television documentary about somebody who had a tumor, and the doctor tells the family and the patient, fortunately, you have a tumor on the side of the brain where it doesn't matter. And it didn't matter because it was in the right brain. It wouldn't affect how they spoke. It would affect maybe how they could think. So this evolutionary leap is in process, and that's why there's a lot of chaos in the world, and why there's so much change in absolutely everybody's life. And one of the things I wanted to be inspiring about is that that's wonderful. Because even though it is often quite uncomfortable, and sometimes we have to face things like we're poisoning the planet, that we have political leaders that aren't concerned with the population or the earth or anything else, when we have those problems, we can despair. In relationships between men and women, we're needing more and more to have it be authentic, to have it be real, to have the partner trustworthy, loving us like another part of us, and we for them. So there is this big thing happening that allows many new venues and avenues of possible creative endeavor. But the key ingredient is this thing of inspiration and intuition. Now, inspiration, the word comes from inspire. Inspire was the Latin to breathe. And people believe that your breath was your spirit. And it's like when you sneeze, people say, God bless you. That's because for a moment they thought your spirit fell out of your body, and they wanted to bless you real quick before a demon got in. So that was the source of God bless you when you sneeze. And the reason that spirit was so associated with breath is because it is the sacred part of life, the mystical part of life. So when you inspire, when you breathe in spirit to people, when you give them inspiration that gives them a greater sense of everything good in the world and themselves and their own power and ability, then you have truly been inspirational. That is the whole real point. And then intuition as a matching piece. Intuition is the right brain's capacity, so it's the word we give, a capacity of the brain to think thoughts never thought before, acausal thoughts, spatial whole thoughts, meaning visual impacts, not logical verbal descriptions. There's so much more to the intuitive experience than we allow. In fact, we not only don't allow full understanding how powerful and important intuition is and how it's trying to be born within every one of us right now. Every part of our bodies is trying to call, to allow more intuition to be in our existence, because then you're not so fearful, you're more whole. You get ideas that counteract the black and white deadlock ideas of linear thinking only, where there's no out. It's just black and white, and that's what's causing all of the polarization in the world. It's an old style of thinking that doesn't really understand intuition. Einstein said that intuition was sacred, and that logic, we made the master over intuition, and that actually intuition should be the master over logic. And what that really means is you have a conscience, which means with your sentience, with that intelligence that has empathy not only for your species and other human beings, but has empathy for animals and the plants and the planet itself, that it has a sense almost of destiny, that we have a greater purpose than to just gather hordes of fake paper to get power over people. It's almost a psychological disease that so few people are accruing so much money, because it doesn't make any sense. Money is made up by us. It's a tool. It's an abstract thing. It's paper and metal. We made it up. We made it up to cover energetic exchanges, things that were bigger than just, a goat for a horse. We wanted to have other ways to give services and do things and get a steady medium that would let us make exchanges. And if we enter into the AI and all the technological coverage that's almost like a global brain of electronic connection around the planet, if that nervous system is not connected to the source of goodness in ourselves, we will have a very efficient way to destroy the planet and to make people miserable. And we need to recognize this because it's real and it's happening already anyway. But then when we see that it's happening anyway, we tend to get frightened. And when we get frightened, then we get a little bit blind, because that makes you say, oh, this is dangerous, we need something different. And you get a little ruthless, you get a little short-sighted instead of inspired. If you keep looking for in every problem, that there is a solution, and you just have to kind of let it present itself to you when you ask about it. Now that may sound so simple and almost not real, but I swear to you on my life, it's one of the most powerful things you can do, and it works. It absolutely works, and we just don't believe it can work, so we don't do it. And when you begin to inspire people, you help them risk doing that, and then things start coming to them. The thing that's happening is that imagination. Oh, I want to say one more thing about intuition. In the IT community, the technology people, they started using a word, I believe, incorrectly. When they want to say something, they didn't do a good job in the software, and you don't do it the way it seems reasonable to do it, and it's complicated, or it's wrong, or it's not what you would think it would be the logical thing to do. They don't say, oh, we made a mistake, it's not very logical what we did. They say, it's counterintuitive. And they use counterintuitive because intuitive has a little mystique about it, but they're using it wrongly. Because intuition is when you know something without logic. It is something, in the dictionary they'll call it instinctual. We don't know what instinct is either, for that matter. But intuition is a part of our intelligence that functions through the medium of our imagination, the mind that can image things, the right brain can image things. And if you kind of like meditate, there's a problem here. What would be a wonderful thing that could happen that I can't even imagine? It's very good to leave an open door when you open yourself to those kind of requests, because then the universe doesn't have to follow the same little linear, narrow track that you have set up and the culture has set up. You can have something come from out here, from out there, and then in 3 months they all converge here and everybody gets exactly what they wanted, and it's something entirely new and entirely beneficial to millions more people. This is the freedom of the release of the imagination and the intuition, and allowing it to be inspired intuition. I believe inspiration is the highest form of intuition. It's the highest frequency. So when you're thinking from an inspired position, when you want a win-win-win-win-win solution, and you don't put any boundaries on how it has to be, you're going to come up with genius. Genius is a word that comes from Genesis, which means creation. And Genesis and genius were something out of nothing. So there is a source in our intelligence, in our connection to the universe. There is a source. And if we give it reverence, if we give it some space, things start happening. And if we ask for things or just mull the problem and say, okay, universe, give me some ideas on that. Let's see what could happen. There's a power in the surrender to this intuitive place. And I set up a little YouTube thing because I decided to call it the shift point. Shift meaning the moment where things change. And the shift point, when I first started doing workshops, I had 2 mind stretchers. And I used to not try to make them literally anything, but just have 2 mind stretchers. And one is that we think, the one that refers to this is about time. We think there's a past, a present, and a future. And we have to pay attention to what happened in the past, so we do it right in the present, so we don't get hurt in the future. And that's a linear continuum of a way to look at time. Nothing wrong with it, except it's not all there is. The thing about logic is great, but it's never equivalent to reality. Reality is bigger, much bigger than logic could ever hold. Logic is a tool. It's a sorting tool. It's a categorizing tool. It's a wonderful tool. It's an essential tool. But it is not equivalent to reality. Reality is immense, and we are young, very immature species, and we're on the brink of allowing ourselves to know more. And that's why the essence of my talk is to really send the experience of that, some inspiration to that, some heads up on that, because it's what's going to be happening. And the shift point and the time thing is another way to look at it that's bigger than the continuum is there's the past, there's the present, which is now, and then there's the future. Well, if you stop and think about the now is like a geometric point. It's actually all there is, because there's now, then there's now. Now, every now is immediately the past, or next immediately the future. So all there really is now. And if you stop to consider that, this imaginary point of now, you start to really feel how it is all there is. It is the point of the most power always. It's the place when you generate love, when you generate forgiveness, when you generate insights, when you open yourself to inspiration, the rest of the universe can connect to you. And let me tell you how I think that is. I have a little short YouTube on the shift point. The shift point for me is that now, that invisible point now. And when we kind of meditate on it and contemplate it, it's mind-boggling, actually, because you kind of go, It's so big. It's like, and what's even bigger now is the whole universe. And in that now, the whole universe is connected in a sentience. The whole universe is connected in every now. And when you allow your meditative mind, your intuitive mind, your inspirational mind, which you allow yourself to go a little bit quiet and think about that sort of mind-boggling, nothing you can do about it moment of now, you have entered a space where the universe will support you, where what you think starts to come about. So when you are meditating on inspiring thoughts, creative ideas, problems you wish you could solve that seem impossible, but you contemplate them and you say, how? How could this be solved? And you say, I want to get some solutions to this. It reminds me of a movie that I sadly can't remember, and I think it happened here at Oxford, the Indian man who came, who was one of the greatest mathematicians that ever lived. What was that great movie?
Cambridge, Ramanujan.
What was it?
It was, I think, Cambridge. It was Ramanujan.
Yeah, and he prayed to a goddess, and the goddess gave him all these equations, gave him equations that nobody could conceive of. And the thing is, when you go to a meditative state, you are linking to something greater. It is our brain, our being, our cells, our individuality, our intelligence, allowing itself to consider something greater, something greater. This has inspired humanity forever. Some anthropologists say that humanity has a God gene because every culture, everybody has something like a God, which is something more than. And if you stop to think of what we've done to it, this is immature logical thinking that's we're so attached to, we've ruined religion. Religion is now political organizations, and it's ideologies, and sometimes they're interesting and good and supportive to people, when they have fellowship, and it's not that it's all bad or anything. It's just so poor, so paltry a rendition of what religion really is. The word religion comes from the Latin ligere, which really means the link to that which is greater. So when we are experiencing that link, we are being sacred, we are being numinous, we are being touched by something more. And this is not an ideology, it's not any given religion, it respects all religions, it knows they all came from something very real, so there's no need to make them be the problem. It's not the religion, it's the ideologies that are based in fear, linear, boxed, for or against linear thinking. And this is true with politics. It's not really the politics that's the problem. It's the manifestation of the politics based on a kind of thinking that people are afraid, and it's black and white, neither or. And nobody's letting themselves truly be statesmen, come from service, come from trying to be good for the people who they're representing. So this is the shift. This is the core solution to our protection and our leap in consciousness and ideas and new realities, and the way to save us from our own self-destruction that is so fear-based. And particularly for people who are being entrepreneurial and people who are dealing with technology. And even you can talk about medicine, and you can talk about jurisprudence, because medicine doesn't care about healing anymore. It's about drug companies and rules, and it's just not, it's not Hippocrates' first do no harm. The oath they're supposed to take, first do no harm, is harm all over the place. Because the tuning in is not to the well-being of the patient. And there's other fears directing the physician about what they can do, what they can't do. They could get sued, they won't be able to do this, if the drug comes in, they won't get money, blah, 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 for their research. There's all this other influence. And the good news is, all you have to do is not listen to it and do what you want to do that you think is good. I mean, it's really much easier than we think. And as soon as you start doing things that are good, you're going to become a magnet. Everybody's going to go, oh my God, look, they did this good thing and it worked. So it's not a Pollyannish thing. It's not like a mystical, no, it's not possible kind of thing. This is a real power of human intelligence and nature that is very stuck right now in an immature block. The immaturity comes from two things. One, it's just immature. You don't expect a 2-year-old to be able to drive a car. They can be the biggest genius in the world, but they cannot drive a car at 2. They haven't developed enough to do it. Or pick any kind of analogy you want like that. So we're young. We're only 2 years old compared to what we are, to what we really are. But the good news is we can jump right up into 20s in a generation if we allow it. And if there's a collective, what's the word I want to say? It's catching is what I'm trying to say. A collective resonance, a collective sensing of it, and a kind of giving to a power to it. And that is catching. I have been in so many situations where people have guns, people are drunk, there's riots going on, whether you're talking about Mexico or Peru or Spain, or so many places in the world that I have been when there's something going on that's very dangerous. And all you have to do really is become a body of light and love, and people will feel it and calm down. They won't always know where it came from, but they'll feel it and calm down. And some people will just want to get away from you because they want to stay angry. And they can't stay angry in the presence of really being loved. Really being loved. And understood that they're in fear because of very understandable reasons. Very understandable. We've all been damaged. There's nobody alive in a body who isn't programmed with a lot of garbage that comes from generations and generations of war and bad treatment and fear about sexuality. Sexuality is another one. Big deal. So sacred, so important, so valuable. And we've got all kinds of fear and control and, man, women differences. And I have a whole thing on men and women. I don't want to go into all that right now because it's quite big. But I do have a tape on it if you ever are interested. It's very interesting, actually. Understanding men and women is very valuable because when men and women love each other and back each other up and give each other support in life, they are insurmountable. They are a force that nobody can undo. Because it's like Jesus said, any two people come together in my name, all things are possible. Well, when a man and a woman line up as friends, as lovers, as soulmates, as in a sacred union, in a sacred conjunction, and say, we are one body, we will help each other. When we see things differently, we'll know it's pay dirt, it's something to look at, I'll tell you, you'll tell me, and then we'll create something new that's bigger, and we'll still be stronger, something better will come. This is why if we don't help men and women be loving to one another, we can't have healthy children. That's why we're all not healthy, because we've all had, I once gave a workshop at adult children of alcoholics in California. And as I came, I thought that was such a funny title. And when I came to the podium, I said, it's really kind of funny for me to talk about this because I feel like nobody's been raised by a grown-up yet. So everybody is kind of like an adult child of a wounded person because our species hasn't progressed to that place yet. But we are the creators. We are the ones who couldn't do it. So there was something else I wanted to say. But anyway, so the intuition and the logic are both needed. Logic keeps track of facts. And if you don't keep honest track of facts, if you use them in a distorted way to manipulate people, always remember this in business, if you use them in a manipulative way to control them or to steal from them or maneuver them, you will be creating such a harm that, and I don't even want to say like bad karma, it's going to backlash. It hasn't so far that much because everybody's caught up in it. But as people get more conscious and see more and understand more and spot what's going on quicker, it's going to go. It's like a run in a knitting thing, you know. It's like you go pull the thread and it's all going to fall apart because once you see, you can't put it back in the bottle. You start to know things. You start to see them. You don't have to be in denial. You don't have to defend the wounds of your childhood. You don't have to be, attracted to your shadow. I used to like to say, men and women fall in love with each other because they match in love. Because there's matching energy. That's another thing I want to tell you about. Matching love, but they also have matching garbage. Garbage being crazy stuff, fears, projections men put on women and women put on men. So there's this stuff. And that, when it's strong, is like a magnet. It draws people together because it causes problems and they have to work it out. And somebody has to grow. At least one person has to grow out of that interaction. And hopefully both people will grow. And if they're not really suited because they were attracted over the crazy stuff, then you go, oh, thank goodness you taught me all that. Great, go have a great life. You're not going to be looking for somebody who's neurotic. You're going to be looking for somebody who truly loves you, who doesn't have all the extra stuff. This is very crucial. And so many people think they just have to put up with a relationship that's got a lot of problems in it because that's how relationships are. No. That's not how they are. They're only that way if you choose it that way. They are not that way. They do not have to be that way. And you can stop having them be that way right away. And if the other person won't do it, then you can say, oh, thank you for showing me that. And then you leave. You don't stay. You don't hang around with it. It reminds me when I was on a show in Ireland, and it was Pat Kenny's show. And they wanted me to talk. I do mediation a lot. And so I wanted to talk about something, either men and women or the Troubles. They asked me, what would I talk about? And I said, well, either one, men and women or the Troubles. And the producer said, oh, the Troubles, definitely, good. So I get to the studio, I'm in what they call the green room. So I'm in there, and he comes in, and he said, like 3 minutes before we're going to go on air, he says, no, I don't want to talk about the Troubles. I want to talk about men and women. So we changed the subject. We started to talk about men and women. He gave me a very hard time, and he saw that as his job, which is always good for me. When people give me a hard time, it lets me prove what I'm teaching, because I don't match with it. And it just keeps changing things. So matching energy, perhaps I should digress and say these two things. Matching energy is an emotional law of the universe, I believe. And it is whatever you are feeling inside emotionally about something, you are sending it. We are all telepathic, whether we know it or not. We just keep it at a fear-based, no, it can't be, but we really actually already are. And when we love each other and we relax, you get spontaneously more telepathic because there's no barriers. You feel safe. But matching energy is an emotional law of the universe, and it has a great power built into it. Because if you're dealing with somebody who's been really crazy to you, all you have to do is not match energy with it. Send compassion to them, have love for them, see them as a 3-year-old being brutalized by their father or their mother or something that made them be crazy like they're being crazy. That's our poor president, he's not mentally well. And he had cruel parents. This is the living archetype of the American shadow of woundedness. So we are all waking up to a different view of actually what's going on. So when somebody's not good with you, when they're unfair and they're dishonest or they're crazy or whatever they're doing, if you send them love, they kind of go, oh, I'm just having a bad day, I'm sorry. They change. They change before your eyes. And if they're really stuck, they'll go, and they'll run away, and they won't deal with you anymore, and they won't talk to you anymore, and you won't have them as a problem anymore, because they just weren't ready to completely let go but they couldn't be mad at you. They couldn't make you be the focus of their projections because you were loving them. And loving, truly being loved, and I don't mean make nice, it's a state of genuine compassion. You know, compassion means with somebody in their passion. And when people are riled up, they have a passion going on, and it's mixed up, and it's got stuff in it that's not good. So if you send love, if you have compassion for them, it helps them straighten it out. It helps things shift. So it's a great power. And I was talking about something else. What was it? There's,
Radio show.
what is it?
Radio show in Ireland.
Oh, the radio show in Ireland. Good girl. There's always somebody who helps me when I travel too far. Thank you. So in the radio show in Ireland, he's giving me all these hard questions, he thinks. And so and this was at the time when divorce was illegal. And he said, well, Patricia, what would you do? You know, there's a problem here in Ireland. There's a lot of alcoholics, and I don't know if he said alcoholics, but men who drink, families, and there's no divorce. And the families and the wives are stuck with having alcoholic mates and fathers. And I said, no, that's not such a hard problem. He said, what? I mean, for a moment I shocked him because I said, that's not such a hard problem. And what he said, well, how is it not a hard problem? And I said, well, one, if you have a belief system that sustains you and you call it your religion and you want it, you follow it. And if you want to follow it, you don't get divorced. You don't have to get divorced. But you cannot live with somebody who's inebriated. You cannot spend daily interactions and have them be in the family home with the children if they're drunk. If they're inebriated, they're not them. They're not home. And no amount of doing anything will make it better. It'll only harm everybody. So what you say to the person who's drinking, male or female, surely, you say, you know, I love you, I want to stay married to you, but I cannot be with you when you're drinking because you're not you. And it isn't healthy. So come around when you're not drinking, we'll be happy. When you're drinking, go away. And then you don't have to get divorced. And you put it all in their lap. They don't have to keep playing the dance of making you, fetch everything and patch it up and contrive things and be codependent with them drinking. You don't have to hide the bottle. You don't have to do any of that silly stuff. It becomes more adult. And it becomes adult to adult. Not critical parent to an adult, not critical parent to a wounded child, not two wounded children beating each other up, not two critical parents judging one another, but you inspire the matching energy of adult to adult. And when you speak to that person as an adult with a problem, you understand, you love them, but they cannot be here when they're inebriated, that's all. It's very simple, and it's honest, and it works, it helps. It takes you out of the trap. So I guess the other thing I wanted to say is how much intuition is part of our love of the planet itself, and how our intuition uses the medium of imagination to think thoughts never thought before, but it also allows us to sense animals and plants and the planet itself. And when we are in tune in that way, you know how you can maybe be mad at a person, but you couldn't imagine being brutal to a little puppy or a cat or something? Like that'd be just, you could make some adult's life miserable, or even a child that that you're very frustrated with, that you're projecting upon. You can make their life miserable, but you would never do it to an animal because they seem more innocent. And then there's people who do it to animals too, and it's because they are just that much more stuck in a certain way. But when you begin to see everyone as innocent but damaged, and that you don't play with them when they're acting damaged, you don't play with them then, That allows you to create a corporation that has people who work together. It allows you to tell somebody who's being disruptive or backstabbing or undermining the group, say, sorry, this is what we're seeing and we really would like you to stay here and help us. But if you're not going to help us, then you won't be able to stay. So it's not like scolding. It's not really judgmental. It's good judgment, but it's not judgmental. It's saying, this is a value for you and a value for us. So when you want to create a group together to make a business, to do any kind of social, collective organization, there must be a large amount of not only goodwill, there has to be honesty. One of the things I always say about honesty and the truth is so huge, truth is so huge you can never say it all. But you can come from a place that is embracing truth and not misrepresentation. So when you're coming from truth and you want to tell somebody a truth that may be a little hard to hear, you don't say, I'm right, I know the truth, and here's this thing you're doing, and it's hard to hear. You say, you move to a place where equally valuable to truth is kindness. Kindness without truth is wishy-washy and often enabling and not really ultimately kind, but in the name of kindness you put up with a lot of stuff. So kindness without truth is messed up. Truth without kindness is an attack. It's not a support. So whenever you have something to say to someone that you believe is true and necessary, muster up all the kindness, all the ways of being kind about telling it without equivocation. The more kind you are, the more blunt you can be about the truth, the more complete you can be about actually telling them what's going on. Because when you're doing it with kindness as well, they don't really feel that attacked. They start to have realizations. Oh, I see. Oh, you don't seem like the enemy when you're kind. And as soon as somebody becomes an enemy, you've moved into old-style thinking, which is black and white thinking, which is why I always say in relationships, one of the ways you can keep a relationship really cooking very nicely is never, in tone of voice, attitude, or thought, make your partner an enemy. Never. Never. Your problem, if you have a problem with them, is to find a way to tell them clearly and kindly. And if they don't accept it, then that's a distancing thing. If they accept it, they will work at changing it. Or maybe they'll only pretend to work at changing it, and it will still hurt you, and you will eventually know. But it is not necessary. And certainly if you've got a good relationship already and you really want to keep it that way, don't let any childhood programming or cultural programming infect your thinking process as to how to respond to something that disappoints you, that hurts you, that you don't like, that you don't approve of, whatever it may be, something you desire they're not listening to, whatever it may be. Don't make them an enemy if they say, no way, I don't want to do that. You say, oh my goodness, that makes me feel so far away from you. What could we do? Let's talk about it. What could we do? And then you brainstorm. Then you hear their point of view. Then you hear why they say absolutely no. It is usually not, they really mean absolutely no. They just think they're going to have to go somewhere they don't want to have to go. And then you find out what that is. And then altogether, the whole relationship is better and better. Now, this is essential knowledge for communication. Whether you're in business, whether you're in a relationship, or whether you're a parent. And when you're a parent, your child is pure. They will learn many neurotic, annoying things, but they will learn them all from you. And the other parent, and a certain amount from TV and the schoolyard and teachers, but pretty much from you, your family dynamic. And you'll often hear them saying the things that, just push your buttons and outrage you, and you then know, oh my goodness, did I ever say that? Did I ever do that? And then you'll find you did. And then you think of the antidote. You think of the way to be loving. One of the ways to change things is I call it change the channel. If you match energy, or if you have a mindset that's always worrying, you've got the channel on the bad news. And the bad news is repetitive, it's scary, goes on and on. So you're on that channel. Well, it will get to you. So when you find yourself stuck in that kind of stuff in your own internal talk, self-talking, change the channel to something inspirational, to something loving, to something kind, to something contemplative, something that lets you think about it and see what it might be, and to sleep on it, and to not need to have an immediate answer, but not shut out real answers like this is not supporting me, or this is hurting me, and this is why I'm upset. And then you narrow down what is upsetting and why it's hurting you. Now, if you've got someone that's coming from a different framework, a whole other belief system, and have so much work to do that they're still so stuck in manipulating and they can't let go of it, then it's going to take like 20 years, and you just probably don't want to stay with that person. I always say the only reason for not staying with somebody is they won't work on it. Now, sometimes they'll say they'll work on it, but they're not. And you have to discern that, and that's part of your job. But basically, that's the real reason for leaving somebody, is they're not working on it. And if you don't want to work on it, then you have to respect that too. Maybe it's just spinning your wheels and it's just painful. You don't need to work on it. Maybe you'd rather be with somebody else that doesn't require you to work on that. So there's all kinds of new possibilities that liberate us, that don't keep us trapped with fear or with narrow thinking, black and white thinking. So intuition, because that's the inspirational part, breathing in spirit, letting something new come. The other, I didn't go through the shift point thoroughly. The shift, because that relates to this, how the intuition and the inspiration lock into a great power. I sort of talked about it, but the shift point is when you notice you're being polarized or fearful. And when you're fearful, you're either being resistant to what's going to be happening, or you're going to rush to make something happen. So if you're resisting to make something happening, you're procrastinating, you're pulling back, you don't want to do it, you put up blocks. I call it, it's like the 3 hours. Anyway, so there's the resistance and then the rush. That's two sides of the toxic coin. That's the coin that doesn't work. So I just made this up this morning, so I'm trying to think what the other 2 hours were. There was a good one, and it was I can't remember, I forgot already. Well, anyway, just remember the one that's toxic and don't do it, because slow down to the middle ground. Oh, I remember what the other hours are, is reflect and be receive. If you're receptive and you reflect, reflecting is like contemplating and thinking about it, thinking it over, not just, they're going to take my house because they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And you get all riled up and you get, I have to rush to do this and I have to do that. And you get that quality, that place. Don't do that. That place doesn't help you really. The very same problem, same this situation. Move to a mindset that's receptive to getting another solution, and reflect on other possibilities. And relax. That's the other R, relax. Because when you relax, you can receive. When you're all riled up, you can't. So there's a necessary sense of self that we need some support with. That's why I'm spending time with this, because I think that does it. And this is something about that same sensitive space. You hold the reins like you have a little bird in your hands. So you hold it very lightly, very gently. You don't pull, but you hold it firm enough so the horse can feel your contact right into their tender mouth. So when you're holding it gently, You just have the slightest thing, and they turn. They feel it, and they so appreciate it. They'll do anything for you because, oh my God, there's somebody that knows on me here. Because it's so sensitive and so powerful. And things like that prove how connected we are and how kindness and compassion are essential ingredients to our sanity. So I think in terms of, I think of this wonderful university and so many great minds and so many people, and not to mention that great mathematician, all these people who come with earnestness, and there has been inspiration, but then they're like all academic situations, like all organizations throughout the world, whether they're legal or academic or medical, all these institutions have a way of breaking the spirit, so to speak, because too many of the people in charge are afraid because they don't know what to do next and they don't want things to get out of hand. So when you are being inspired at Oxford, if you meet any resistance, take it into your heart with a lot of love and try to think of some interesting, joyful way to unresist the person. And that is how you can make a lot of progress. And so I thank you very much right now and send you many blessings. I'm very pleased to have been with you. Thank you for listening. So, thank you. Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay.